everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on the Public Protection Classification Oversight, PPC. I'm Ben Gonzalez from TDI's Communications Office, and the plan for today is to give you an oversight of the PPC Oversight Program here at the State Fire Marshal's Office, and we'll discuss the Insurance Services Office as well, ISO, and the Fire Suppression Rating Schedule Survey, and why all of this is important for your communities. So our presenter today is Joel Duke. Joel is the PPC Oversight Officer for the State Fire Marshal's Office. He reviews all those PPC grading submissions and mediates issues throughout the state. So we'll have some time after the presentation to answer a few of your questions, but right now, let's get started with Joel's presentation, and I'll see you right back here for the live Q&A.
Hello, my name is Joel Duke. I am the Public Protection Classification Oversight Officer with the Texas State Fire Marshal's Office, and welcome to the PPC Oversight webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Today I will be discussing the Public Protection Classification Program within the state of Texas and the process of a fire suppression rating schedule surveyed by the Insurance Services Office. The state of Texas has statute that enacts specific oversight of organizations within Texas that conduct the fire suppression rating schedule. Currently, that state-approved organization is the Insurance Services Office. During this presentation, I will refer to the Fire Suppression Rating Schedule as FSRS, the Insurance Services Office as ISO, Public Protection Classification as PPC, and the Texas State Fire Marshal's Office will be referred to as SFMO. The term community is referring to a fire protective system. This can include fire departments at a city, a town, a county, volunteer fire departments, emergency services districts, or literally just a community. ISO conducts the FSRS for all communities within Texas. Once ISO has completed the FSRS, a review of the survey is compiled into a document known as a PPC Summary Report. The PPC Oversight Officer thoroughly reviews each submittal and ensures that surveys are in accordance with the FSRS. The PPC Oversight Officer coordinates quarterly meetings that involve multiple divisions and sections within the Texas Department of Insurance and ISO. Some of these divisions or sections in attendance include property and casualty actuarials, government relations, general counsel, internal audit, directors of SFMO, and the State Fire Marshal. These meetings highlight ISO's progress made on surveys across Texas, procedural updates and changes, new hires, any issues and/or resolutions that occurred. The PPC Oversight Officer also gives an overview of important updates within the PPC Oversight section. Along with these duties, the PPC Oversight Officer attends multiple FSRS surveys throughout the year, gives trainings and presentations statewide, and provides technical assistance to all who inquire. The question I receive daily is a request for PPC scores. This information is considered proprietary, and an open records request must be submitted with the Texas Department of Insurance. If requested, the PPC Oversight Officer will coordinate and mediate meetings between a community and ISO. From time to time, a fire chief has contacted me and let me know that they believe they deserve more points than they had received. This is a time where I take responsibility to connect the community and ISO. When I mediate meetings, I create an agenda, I lead the process, follow up with a detailed email of key points covered in the meeting, questions that need to be answered, and steps moving forward. The primary goal of these meetings is to collaborate and find a common solution. To this day, all of our mediation attempts have been successful, and the community and ISO are able to come to a reasonable agreement. Texas is the only state in the United States that approves or denies surveys completed by ISO. After a thorough review of PPC submittals by the PPC Oversight Officer, approval or disapproval recommendations are sent to the SFMO State Fire Marshal. The State Fire Marshal has the final approval of the proposed PPC gradings. Once a decision has been made, ISO is made aware and is then able to publish the scores to their subscribers. I will be covering this topic in depth later in the presentation. Until 1998, the SFMO conducted fire risk analysis surveys in-house. This program was known as the Texas Key Rate System. Effective February 1st, 1998, the Texas Department of Insurance initiated the use of ISO's FSRS with related PPCs in lieu of the Texas Key Rate System. Public protection classes are currently being used instead of key rates in the determination of homeowners' benchmark rates. The Texas Department of Insurance is responsible for oversight of ISO's fire suppression rating system. The Texas Addendum was developed and incorporated key components of the previous key rate system. The Texas Addendum was adopted into the FSRS survey. The FSRS was updated in 2015. Part of this update included the adoption of the Texas Addendums into the FSRS, and the Texas exceptions were created and added to the FSRS. The Texas exceptions are unique to the state of Texas. These exceptions provide potential credit for Texas state training and the creditable use of compressed air foam systems. Also in 2015, the previously used Texas Addendums were incorporated into the new nationwide FSRS performed by ISO. For the past 25 years, ISO has been the state-approved organization surveying all communities within Texas using the FSRS. Verisk, the parent company of ISO, has been providing data-driven risk analysis information to insurers for 50 years. Verisk has developed proprietary technology platforms that subscribed insurance providers consider when underwriting premiums. The FSRS surveys communities on their capability to suppress first alarm structure fires. Within Texas, there are 9 team members of ISO. All team members are fire protection analysts. 6 of the team members are field representatives of ISO that perform the FSRS surveys across the state of Texas. Communities will never be charged for ISO field reps to survey their community for time spent on the phone, for emails, or any other interaction that may happen. This is a completely free service to the communities. Verisk provides the insurance industry with data and analytics for all aspects of risk. Recently, ISO has rebranded to be known as a product of Verisk. ISO will continue using their name as it is filed with the state of Texas. Virtually every fire protection service knows the name ISO, so moving forward there may be a voicemail from a field rep of Verisk, and it's okay, you can call them back. The FSRS is the schedule that is filed in Texas and almost every state across the country to evaluate and analyze every community's fire protection resources. ISO provides a copy of the FSRS to all fire chiefs. I highly recommend Fire Protective Services keep a copy of the FSRS on hand. During one of my observations of an ISO survey, a fire chief in Central Texas had developed an ISO committee within their department. This committee reviews the FSRS throughout the year and figures out what standards they were meeting and where they can improve. This method was very helpful for the department and beneficial to their PPC classification, but more importantly, they are ensuring their citizens are protected by a highly performing department. The FSRS is performance-based and develops a rating that provides the insurance industry with accurate levels of community fire protection. It is based on a community's abilities in response to a first alarm structure fire and the community's risk reduction efforts. Basically, it starts when someone calls 911. How fast is that call answered and processed to get to the fire suppression resources dispatched? Then, what fire departments respond and what are their capabilities? Once they get on the scene, all fire departments need water. What is the water supply that's available and the water provider's ability to meet the required fire flow? So there is a lot that goes into the FSRS, and it involves multiple, if not all, departments of a community. Also, community's risk reduction is incorporated into the grading. National standards are referenced in every section of the FSRS. These standards create a consistent benchmark and make sure the survey is up to date. The survey covers a lot of information, and it is really important communities create an actionable timeline of how they will collect all of the data within their community. The FSRS represents how fire safe a community is and provides a measurement of risk to a community. Communities receive a grading of a Class 1 through Class 10, with Class 1 being the highest score possible. To those communities who are taking baby steps in the right direction to get a higher PPC grading, remember this process takes time. I've had the pleasure of traveling all over Texas and getting to meet fire chiefs and fire personnel from Wichita Falls all the way down to Brownsville. Fire chiefs are great leaders, and they also love to share stories about their departments. One thing that all of these stories have in common is that communities do not get a better grading overnight. It takes hard work and time for the entire community system to improve a PPC grading. ISO's goal is to be on a 5-year periodic cycle to keep PPCs updated. A fire chief or highest ranking official can request a survey at any time. There's a common misconception in Texas that updates can only be made at the time of a survey. This is incorrect. I frequently travel for work, and I've heard fire personnel from all over the state believe they can't turn in any improvements to ISO in between their surveys. Communities can and should submit updates to ISO at any time, especially when there have been significant improvements. Even if the improvements don't change the overall classification, they may be extremely important to residents and businesses. The two primary examples of improvements that should be reflected as soon as possible is when a water distribution system has been added or expanded and when new fire stations become equipped and staffed. Communities can submit updates by emailing ISO or by submitting the updates in ISO's Mitigate platform. Mitigate is a free platform for fire chiefs that provides a breakdown of your PPC summary report information and provides benchmarking that compares your community statewide, nationally, and amongst a peer group of similar jurisdictions. There's also a map that illustrates your fire protection area and shows the fire stations, hydrants, and commercial buildings that ISO has on file for a community. It also includes a page that lets fire chiefs submit improvements at any time. All communities that have had a survey since 2015 will have data in the Mitigate platform. If a fire chief is wanting to create an account, head to the Mitigate website and select Sign Up for Access. The FSRS measures the major elements of a community's fire protection system and develops a numerical grading called the Public Protection Classification. This is often referred to as a score, grading, or PPC class. The grading scale is a Class 1 to a Class 10. Class 1 represents superior fire protection, and Class 10 represents no recognized protection or beyond 5 road miles of a fire station. The ratings are based on a 105.5 point system. However, in Texas, there is 106.5 points available in the FSRS. You can see here that the fire department section has the most points at 50, followed by the water supply and distribution at 40, and emergency communication is 10 points. A divergence factor is incorporated in the fire department and water supply sections of the grading. The divergence factor may alter the score based on a relational difference between the fire department and water supply sources. So simply put, a community could have good fire suppression and no water, or good water supply and no fire suppression. Next is community risk reduction, which is 5.5 points. Within Texas, an additional point is available for creditable compressed air foam systems and a possible 3.26 points that can be incorporated into the training part of the fire department section. Remember, the FSRS is performance-based. Having regularly tested equipment and apparatus that meet specifications is a vital and necessary part of the SFRS, but a big portion of the grading is how it all works together. 34 of the 50 points of the fire department section is personnel, deployment analysis, and training. Where stations are located, who's responding from them, and how are they trained and certified is just as important. When I've observed FSRS surveys, every single community had room to grow in personnel, deployment analysis, or training, and usually it was all three. These categories are major components of the overall score. Similarly, the water supply is vital, but equally important is being able to distribute that water to the fire personnel. In my observations, many departments miss points for hydrant inspections and flow testing. This is so common that in about 30% of the surveys I've observed, we have to go out and do flow tests during the pre-survey meeting. For the emergency communication section, adequate circuits and computer-aided dispatch are vital, but just as important is how fast are calls processed, dispatched, and that the personnel are well trained. Please remember, the PPC Oversight Officer and ISO are here to help you break down the points of the FSRS. If you need help finding any of these sections I just discussed, give one of us a call. The community risk reduction sections of the FSRS offers a potential 5.5 points. These additional points let communities that implement an effective fire prevention program be credited for their accomplishments without reducing points from a community who are still working on their programs. The sections evaluated in the community risk reduction are fire prevention and code enforcement, public fire safety education, and fire investigation programs. It is important to have a fire code, but what really matters is the enforcement of the code and that those personnel are properly trained as well. Public fire safety education includes programs in school along with school emergency drills, fire safety presentations to senior citizens, to the Chamber of Commerce, or economic development entities. Other options are public outreach events, installing fire detectors, or just teaching general home fire safety. When I was observing a different survey in Central Texas, a department had a lint camera, and they were able, and when requested, they would go into the citizen's home and run this camera in their dryers and see where lint was accumulating. A little fact, lint is the #1 reason why dryers ignite. Of course, this is not possible for all departments, but it's just a great example of how a community can educate the public. The SFMO website has a link to free educational resources provided by the National Association of Fire Protection. So go get in those classrooms and give those hard-working teachers a well-deserved break. An important note is that the public outreach must be measurable. Communities can also get credit by training with Wildland Urban Interface, implementing the International Association of Fire Chiefs Ready, Set, Go program, and or NFPA's FireWise USA program. In regards to the fire investigation, the schedule is looking for your procedures to investigate the origin and cause of all fires. The community risk reduction section is basically extra credit, and I've seen it really help departments achieve a better grading. Plus, it's a great way to get out there and meet your community. Credit for a compressed air foam system is only available in Texas. To receive credit for this exception, all of the following must apply. The apparatus must have 300-gallon tank capacity, a minimum of 750 gallon per minute pump, a minimum of 120 standard cubic feet per minute air compressor permanently mounted, a minimum 2.5 Class A foam concentrate pump, a minimum 20-gallon foam tank, and at least one apparatus equipped with CAFS unit must respond on all structure fires on first alarm assignments. The CAFS apparatus must be one of the first 3 apparatus to arrive. All right, we're going to cover the FSRS survey process, and I want everyone to take a moment and see how the arrows are starting at the top left. They're going down and over to the right, back up, and over to the right again and down. We're going to spend a good amount of time on this slide. ISO's goal is a 5-year cycle of conducting each community survey. Based on a brief questionnaire, a community will either continue with the full survey or receive a score that does not require a full survey to be completed. In this brief questionnaire, the community must have an answer of true for all questions asked. And moving on, if a community moves forward with the survey process, the fire chief will receive a copy of the FSRS and the pre-survey documents. And FYI, a complimentary copy of the FSRS is available for fire chiefs at any time by contacting ISO. The pre-survey documents are a checklist of all information needed by ISO to perform a survey. This documentation is in-depth and will take a good amount of time. I mentioned earlier that these documents will also cover the water department and emergency communication departments, and I recommend creating a committee and assigning each member or small group of the committee a specific section of the pre-survey documents. These members can either retrieve the information themselves or send it out to specific departments and keep them accountable in returning the data. I have attended only one survey where all of the pre-survey documentation was completely filled out and provided at the pre-survey meeting. This is kind of like fire inspections. Do the preventive work up front and you don't have to put out a fire later. The ISO field reps or PPC Oversight Officer are available to clarify any of the information that is being asked for from the community. If a community uses county dispatch or private water supply, this typically takes extra time for the information to be gathered or returned. So the earlier this process is started, the easier the process goes. Next, during the pre-survey meeting, the field rep will attend a live meeting with the fire personnel and review all of the pre-survey documents. At this meeting, a detailed review of the data is conducted. In my observation, these meetings are run more effectively when all necessary parties are in attendance or available via phone or video conferencing. This can include the fire chief, city manager, the director of the water department, the police chief, and whoever else the community thinks needs to attend. This is helpful because any information that is missed or incorrect, these officials can either have their employees send it to them ASAP or just double check that the information is valid. Please digitize and save your documents in a known and shared computer file. Having these documents digitally available will help your future staff know what is needed and gives them a clear path of where improvements can be made. And also, if ISO needs another copy of these documents, it makes it really easy to locate them and send them over. Moving right along, if there's a pre-survey documentation that is missing, ISO field rep will coordinate with the fire chief to make sure all creditable data is received. I have had meetings with ISO field reps who have waited weeks to have documentation returned to them, and doing this only makes a lengthy process even lengthier. Next, the amount of documentation ISO receives from the fire chief will dictate the amount of time it takes to complete the FSRS. All data is necessary to accurately calculate and propose a grading to a community. And it is our goal here at SFMO that every community is getting the credit they deserve. We fully understand that fire personnel are incredibly busy and that this is just one more thing added on. And this is why I recommend having one of the department committees being dedicated to meeting ISO standards year-round. Texas is the only state in the country that has a 30-day review period for its communities. I highly recommend communities take advantage of this time and review their submittal package in detail. If there was documentation that was not provided during the time of the survey, this is the perfect opportunity to turn it in to the ISO field rep. If a community agrees with their score, they should save their ISO PPC submittal in a well-known and shared folder. This will help the community's future staff. If the PPC submittal is misplaced, the fire chief can submit an open records request with TDI or send an official letterhead request to ISO. Next, after the community has reviewed their submittal for 30 days, ISO sends the submittal to the SFMO for a 30-day review period. As I've said before, Texas is the only state that gets to review ISO survey submittals and either approve or deny them. ISO is not able to publish Texas community scores until the state fire marshal has made this final decision. Next, SFMO will review the proposed PPC submittals within 30 days. During this time, the PPC Oversight Officer reviews that all necessary documentation has been received from ISO and that the survey is consistent with the adopted fire suppression rating schedule. Final review and approval is completed by the State Fire Marshal. Once approved, the PPC Oversight Officer will email a copy of the SFMO approval letter to the contact indicated in the ISO submittal. Communities should make sure that the email they provide is correct and frequently checked. Communities might consider creating an email address specific to the community. For example, statefiremarshal@emailaddress.com. This will help communicate important information with the team despite staff changes. Here at TDI, we have a paperless initiative and we appreciate digital communication. Communities should save the State Fire Marshal approval letter in a known shared location. Please note, I do not email the ISO summary report to the communities, just the SFMO approval letter. Once a community receives the approval of their score, the score may be shared in any manner that the community sees fit. A community does not need approval from the State Fire Marshal's office or ISO to market and share their PPC score. I've seen communities who make announcements in the local paper, websites, community newsletters. They've created challenger coins, decals, hats, and you name it. The score is your score. The SFMO approval letter will include the effective date of the new PPC grading. Property owners receive a score based on the fire protection available to an area. A community may receive a single class or split class grading. If the score is a single class or the first number of a split class, this number is properties within 5 road miles of a fire station and within 1,000 feet of a creditable water supply. For split classifications, the second number is properties within 5 road miles of a fire station, but they are beyond 1,000 feet of a creditable water supply. All communities beyond 5 road miles of a fire station are automatically a Class 10. It is very important to note that an area may be within 5 road miles of a neighboring fire station, but if that is not the station or department that provides them fire protection services, they do not get that community score. All communities get a Class 1 through 10 rating. Class 1 through 8 ratings apply to all properties within 5 road miles of a station that have a recognized water supply. A Class 9 rating applies to areas within 5 road miles of a station, but little to no water supply capabilities. Class 8B is a classification that recognizes Class 9 areas that are able to haul at least 4,000 gallons of water on a first alarm structure fire. A Class 10 rating indicates no creditable fire protection within the 5 road miles or beyond 5 road miles. Before the 2015 update to the FSRS, the ISO staff began to notice some very important trends. These trends were sent to ISO actuarial staff members, and they developed some improved grading methods. The first update was the addition of a Class 10W that I will go over in just a minute. The actuary staff also noticed a trend that properties within 5 road miles of a fire station but beyond 1,000 feet of a creditable water supply receive less fire loss due to the highly performing department that they are protected by. So now a community that was previously graded as a 2/9 is a 2/2X. A community that was previously a 3/8B are known as a 3/3Y. All right, so here's an example of a single classification, and we're going to say this is a Class 4 community. This means that every property within 5 road miles of a fire station and within 1,000 feet of a creditable water supply will be a Class 4. That means everyone in the light blue area is a Class 4. Now, this is an example of a split classification. So we still have our Class 4 community represented in the light blue, but this slide also has those Class 4 communities in yellow. These are the properties that are still within 5 road miles of a station, but they are beyond 1,000 feet of that creditable water supply. So both numbers of the split class are within 5 road miles of a station. The first number represents areas who have a creditable water supply within 1,000 feet, and the second number represents those who do not. Since the fire department is rated a 4, the yellow area will be rated 4X, giving this community a classification of a 4/4X. Previously, this would have been known as a 4/9. Now notice that there are 2 yellow areas within that blue area. These areas may be just 2 road miles from a fire station, but they are still beyond 1,000 feet of a creditable water supply, which grades them as a 4X. Now, most likely every community will experience this situation, but not all of them, and they are typically rural areas or large plots, and often they're surrounded by a single class community. Okay, so we have our light blue and yellow areas that are within 5 road miles of a fire station, rated as a class 4/4X. Now this green area is covered by the same fire department, but they are beyond 5 road miles, and this means all of the properties in this area are a class 10. Now an area may be a 10W if they are beyond 5 road miles, but within 7 road miles of a station, and are within 1,000 feet of that creditable water supply. A creditable water supply may be the hauled water from a fire department. Before ISO submits a retrogression to the SFMO, they will exhaust all efforts to address the factors that are causing the retrogression. ISO lets communities know that they can turn in their missing documentation, agree with the retrogression, or enter a retrogression improvement plan. ISO has a designated full-time employee that provides valuable support to communities throughout the retrogression improvement plan process. If a community chooses to enter the retrogression improvement plan, they must provide a detailed plan on how they will maintain or improve their current PPC score. ISO's designated full-time employee will periodically reach out to the community to ensure that improvements are being made. If there are no plans for improvements to be made, or ISO is not able to get in contact with the community, ISO will email the community and let them know that they are planning to submit the PPC grading submittal to the State Fire Marshal's office. ISO keeps the PPC Oversight Officer in the loop of all retrogression communication and retrogression improvement plans. When ISO submits a retrogression PPC submittal to the SFMO, the PPC Oversight section creates an SFMO retrogression approval letter. This is a newly implemented process, and it is one more way for us to make sure that the community is aware of their retrogressed score. This letter allows the community to accept their score or to disagree with the score. If a community disagrees with the retrogression, a meeting will be coordinated between the community, ISO, and the PPC Oversight section. At this meeting, the community should attend with all of the documentation that shows they deserve more credit than they've received. You know, as I said earlier, our goal is to make sure our hardworking communities are getting all of the credit that they deserve. It is better to have an updated score than an old score. There is a common thought in Texas that a community's last score means they are getting credit for that score for forever. Now, this may or may not be true, but remember, communities all over Texas are growing rapidly, and population increases and new building developments are public data that anyone can access. I want to remind everyone again that communities are able to share their annexations, new fire stations, additional full-time employees, new water supply systems, or any other beneficial update on ISO's free platform Mitigate, or by contacting ISO directly. This is a free platform and is available to departments that have had a survey completed since 2015. The state of Texas does not have oversight of how insurance providers utilize the PPC scores. They are able to use the ISO data in any way that they see fit. Some may recognize an 8B and some may not. Some may recognize a class 910 and some may see it as a 10. Also, fire risk analysis is not the only factor that is included in underwriting. This is why when a community receives an updated PPC grading, we recommend that the citizens compare insurance providers to find their best option. Although a PPC score goes into effect on a specific date, homeowners won't typically see an adjustment to premiums until the time of their annual renewal.
All right, welcome back to our Q&A portion of the webinar. Joel and Hugh, if you'll please turn on your cameras. So joining us now to field your questions is our presenter, Joel Duke. And joining Joel is Hugh Skip Gibson from the Verisk ISO PPC program. Skip's the Texas Regional Manager for the Community Hazard Mitigation Program. All right, before we get into our list of questions, which I see is growing, just a couple of ground rules that I need to pass along. Please use the Q&A for any questions you want us to try to answer. Should be a button at the bottom of your Zoom window to type in your questions there. We're not going to be answering questions from the chat for this section. And any questions that we don't get to during today's session, you can always email us. So send those to PPC Oversight at tdi.texas.gov. That's PPC OVERSIGHT at tdi.texas.gov, and we'll try to get you an answer. All right, gentlemen, you ready to take some questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
All right, sounds good. First up, does the SFMO ever reject ISO ratings? Joel?
Yes, that could potentially happen in statute. In practice, it's very rare. But yeah, under the Texas Administrative Code, Title 28, Part 1, Chapter 34, Subchapter B, we do have the right to disapprove that based on if what we require has not been totally turned in. That's when we're able to do that, and we would notify the filer and notice ISO of that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we do have that right. It is very, very rare that it needs to happen.
Okay, sounds good. A rare event. Next question up. Why does ISO evaluate every 5 years? Or what's the point of the 5 years? Can you just request one at any time? Maybe for Skip?
Yes, you may, and I'll let Skip answer the rest of this one.
Yeah, there can be a lot of improvements in a community within 5 years, and we always want to reflect the good work that communities do with their fire protection system. It's also an excellent tool for communities in their planning, justification, and budgetary processes. In that, with the summary report that we give communities, it kind of gives them a blueprint, if you will. It's we never profess to communities how they should manage their fire protection resources, but it is very helpful for them. We also have a website for fire chiefs called Mitigate that provides detailed information on their summary report, including benchmarking comparisons statewide, nationally, and amongst a peer group of similar communities. And, at any point, I like the second part of the question, can you request one? Yes. At any point you can, when you know that there's been improvements within that periodic cycle, you can request one. And as we indicated, and Joel indicated in the presentation, that we always want to make sure that fire stations and hydrants are put in our system. They can be done without a regrade at any point. So we want to reflect them. They can be a huge help in getting a property from a 10 to an 8 or better, or off the 9 classification in the case of adding fire hydrants. And also, as Joel indicated in the presentation, there's never a cost for any of our services.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. The next question is about training in Texas. He says, there's Texas exceptions for training. How many staff members need to teach at the annual fire school in order to receive credit or points available in that particular category?
Yeah, so how many staff members would need to teach for credit for Texas exception training? Yeah, it's not specified. It's more about being certified through that process. But we do not have a specified how many teachers need to teach at that training. Skip, do you have anything else to add on that?
Well, yeah, and I think what the question is alluding to is career departments that are, their folks are certified by the Texas Commission on Fire Protection. The Texas exception on training mainly benefits the volunteer fire companies, individual members to seek that certification type training through TEACs. So, but however, and it's a good question, that career departments that have officers that do teach within that, there is some minimal credit provided there in the training section.
Okay. Next up, question is, are the PPC summary reports public records? Are those available online? Can we get those?
Okay, so this is a very, very frequent question I get. So the PPC summary reports are not public record through me. If your community, they have the right, when that score is given to them and approved by our office, they have the right to share that as they see fit. I have frequently seen communities, especially if they're very proud of their score, put it on the side of their trucks and their engines. They might have it on their website. They might have it on Facebook. But from my office, that must be an open records request. That is for fire chiefs included. For fire chiefs, the only thing I can share with them directly is the PPC approval letter. But that is not the breakdown of the summary report. But regarding fire chiefs, if this was a fire chief that asked this, if you've had a survey since 2015, you're able to go into ISO's mitigate platform that was mentioned in the presentation. And Skip, I'll let you finish on that one.
Yeah, the mitigate platform provides a very detailed breakdown of all categories. And as I mentioned before, has benchmarking information as well.
Hey, Skip, how do you get to that mitigate website?
Yeah, any fire chief can just email me personally or through our website, our email address, and we will get them signed up.
All right, perfect. Thank you, sir. Another question about training. Currently, we only count the 18 hours of facility training if it's completed at a college training facility. However, some of our fire stations have training towers and other kind of training props available right on site. Is there any way we can count the fire training that goes on at these local facility as facility training?
Thank you, Ben. So it sounds like this is also frequent that multiple departments will use one central training facility. And that's great hearing that you're getting towers and some training props within other areas. So if you are also a fire chief and you have access to the fire suppression rating schedule, the physical copy of it, this is covered in section 580A, and you must meet all of those requirements to be able to get you must be able to meet those requirements for that training facility to count. Skip, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. If those, especially with the training towers, if they're meeting the same requirements, 3 stories or taller, and they are doing facilities types training there, we would certainly look at that as on a case-by-case basis.
All right. Very good. Thank you both. Next up, if a particular dwelling is beyond 1,000 feet of a hydrant, but it has residential fire sprinklers installed, would they get something, a better rating than X?
Potentially. Skip, I'll just let you take this whole one.
Sure. That's a pretty loaded question there. First of all, it's beyond 1,000 feet, so it's getting the X. But keep in mind, the X is a good indicator that it's a community that has a fire department with a recognized water distribution system or hauled water capability, now protecting an outside area. So it's not getting the 9 or the 8B, so that's a good thing. As far as the residential NFPA 13 standard 13 sprinkler system, insurers will look at that separately and give appropriate credit where they see fit. So you would still have, say it's a class 5 community, it would be a 5X, but when insurers look at pricing premiums, a lot of other factors go into that, and I am sure I'm sure that they would there would be consideration on the residential sprinklers.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Next up, for a single class community, are not all the properties in that community deemed to get the designated class for that community?
So what happens in this situation is that first number, no matter if it's by itself or if it has the slash, if there's still a property in that area that's beyond 1,000 feet, they would still get either that 9 or that 10 in the background. However, ideally it would be everybody, but it's very, very rare to have a single class. Skip, anything to expand on that?
Well, yeah, just in general, yes, all areas within the community get the single class. If it's a single class, every area has a water supply. The only difference in that is that commercial properties may have a higher classification than the community's PPC, because it could be a high hazard type occupancy. You can never have a better rating, but you can have higher, i.e. we always laugh, if you had the dynamite factory in your community and you're a class 5, a dynamite factory is probably going to be a class 10.
So there can be islands within that one class community.
Generally, for residential and most commercial properties, you're going to have the same, but higher hazard, large needed fire flow buildings may have a higher classification.
Okay, thank you. Next up, the question is, can we delay an inspection request if we're right in the process of building some new fire stations? Can we put that off a little bit?
Mr. Gibson?
Yeah, and that's a great question. We would work together with that fire chief and talk about it. If there can be an improvement currently, if the community is a 6 or a 7 and it hasn't been done in over 5 years, and we know they can move to a 5, even without those new fire stations, that's a win. And we certainly want the residents and the businesses to get credit for that now. If it's a merely that, and then adding those stations later causes an additional improvement, that would be beneficial. If it's a matter of just maintaining a class or something like that, we would just have to have a conversation about that. And we always want to work what's best for the community. But it's a great question, because I get this a lot of times, and that updating the public protection classification and giving you updated summary report and access to mitigate is usually helpful to the community. And then we can add fire stations at any time and improve it. But again, that's on a case-by-case basis. If it's within 5 years, yes, we'd probably wait until the fire station comes online.
Okay, sounds good. Skip, can you share a professional email address, since we mentioned that they can contact you for certain things?
Yes, it's hgibson@iso.com.
Very good. Hugh Gibson, H. Gibson. All right. Next up, what is considered a community when we're talking about an unincorporated county area with an ESD that's covering that area, though?
Yeah, so what's considered a community in an unincorporated county? So if that ESD is covering your area, your score is going to be affected by which station of that ESD is covering your area. And unincorporated, really community, kind of like this question is being asked, it's better to say who's providing you fire protection to that community, which is unincorporated or any plot of land in Texas. So yeah, you're going to get the score that's reflected by the department of the ESD that protects your community. Skip.
Yeah, and that's a really great question as well, because we have ESDs that may cover a community, a city, a town, whatever, maybe several towns, and they cover a general ESD area and a former outside protection area of one of the cities or towns. So you can have several a fire department covering those areas can have separate publications for each of those. All the general information is going to be the same. The differences are going to be the water supply and what the needed fire flows are in each of those areas. So it is possible that an ESD could be a 5 in the general area of the ESD, service 2 cities, small cities that may have low needed fire flows, could be a 4 or something like that. And maybe the other one has higher ones is a 6. So we would look at, yes, as Joel indicated, the fire department, and then what jurisdictions that fire department covers. In Texas, we would have a separate rating, if you will, publication for each of those jurisdictions.
All right. Here's a kind of a general question about water and availability. With the rapid growth that we're seeing in Texas from people coming from other states, how do residents know there's enough water for fire protection and consumer use?
I'm really glad this question is being asked, because I've had a lot of people, not a lot, a handful of people who kind of moved out to the country, or sometimes are like 5.4, 5.5 miles away from a station. First, you're going to need to contact your community and ask this question that you're going to be moving in. Community is a strange word. If you're moving to a city, you would call your city council, call your city hall, have someone connect you who can answer that question. Potentially, this is on the website of your fire department that's going to be covering you already. It's very frequent that they're going to have their jurisdiction. You're just going to want to reach out to the local community. It could be a town hall, might be the county, might be the city hall, and figure out who could give you that answer. And then again, on websites, this is frequently already put there, but this is absolutely something you should figure out before you move, because it's not fun to find out you're a 10 after you move to a very nice neighborhood.
Yeah. All right, next up, can you tell us what qualifies somebody to be a fire educator?
Yeah, so someone qualifies as a fire educator. This is going to be certifications through the Texas Commission of Fire Protection, which they're their own agency within Texas. They are not a part of us. We deal with the inspector and investigator side. But yeah, you would need to be qualified through them, and that would kind of be up to Texas A&M and the Fire Marshal Association on how qualified their educators are.
Okay, let's move on. Try to get a couple more. We got about 5 minutes left. Is the 5 miles from a fire station governed or measured? Is it by how the crow flies, by road miles? What is it?
It is by exact road miles. And it's not a diameter issue at all, because the fire department is going to be driving those road miles. So potentially, unfortunately, you might, in a radius or diameter, sorry, you're going to be maybe 2 miles away. But if that road loops all the way around, this 5 miles is based on the growth rate of the fire. So after 5 minutes of a property that's on fire, you can kind of just imagine it basically goes exponential of the fire growth. So that's where that number comes from. And it is by road miles, not how the crow flies.
Yep. Every second counts when we're talking about this.
Yes, sir.
Next up, as far as rating letter goes, to the ESD, is that going to the ESD or not to the county commissioners?
So during the survey with the field representative, they're going to bold who the main contact is,
Okay.
who they communicated this through the whole time. And there's going to be other officials on that list. Our policy is we send it to the main communicator, and within that letter, not tell them. We encourage them to send this on their own to who they see fit. Again, this is frequently on people's websites. And yeah, it would go to the main contact of that ESD. Skip, is there anything else to cover on that?
Yeah, we go to the fire chief and the board president of the ESD. Keep in mind, if they protect any other communities or outside areas, then letter would be sent, of the notification, to the highest municipal official of those entities as well.
Okay, perfect. Let's keep going here and get a couple more in. How do you determine if insurance companies are following PPC grades that are approved? I guess that's do they have the latest information there?
Yeah, thank you. So regarding oversight with this, the Texas Department of Insurance, we do not have oversight how insurance companies use the PPC grading. Verisk and ISO are, the number one source of information for actuarials within insurance providers. However, they're not told in any way how to use these. Anecdotally, seems like it's pretty common, the trends, but we don't have that information available, so I'm unaware of the exact answer. And yeah, Skip, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just agree. The majority of insurers within the country do use the public protection classifications.
Yeah,
Good to know.
how they use that and the formulas that are involved for their rate setting is usually proprietary. So you're right, they could use it however they see fit, and it's one of many factors that are considered.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to wrap it up there, guys. We are out of time for today. So I know there's still some questions out there. Apologize for that. If we didn't get to your question, or you think of something else later that you'd like us to address, just email us ppcoversight@tdi.texas.gov. Skip, can you give your email again?
hgibson@iso.com.
hgibson@iso.com. And of course, we'll try to get you an answer if we can. That's it for today. So thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next TDI webinar.